What are logical connectors, anyways? Well, here are some examples. Usually, frequently, first, next, however, furthermore. In contrast, on the other hand, and you probably know a lot of words that seem like these, moreover, for instance, or second, third, then. Uh, these are adverbs, right? It's a type of adverb. There's other types, and we're going to look at that more in just a moment. These things, logical connectors, are used to connect ideas, and that's what this image is trying to sort of get at, the idea of a linking, connecting word. They're easy to misuse, and that is for reasons related to grammar, but also meaning. This video, we're going to look at the first issue, grammar. Okay, so these are a type of adverb, but it's not the only type. So let's see the difference here between logical connectors and another type of adverb called subordinators. Now let's say, for instance, that we're going to connect the sentences that you see below with the logical connector. However, how can we connect that? Well, it could go in here somewhere, right? So let's drop it in there. And then what else do we have to do? Well, all right, we need some punctuation here too, right? And we could put a comma here. No, we could not. But the key thing is what happens here. We're fine with a period. That works like that, right? The other thing we could do is not a period, but a semicolon. That's this thing here. It's like a period floating over a comma. A semicolon, it's almost kind of like a period and a comma got together and they had a baby. And the baby has qualities of both parents here. It's a period that functions like a period, but it feels like a comma here. And we use these to connect things that could be complete sentences. What does not work here is just a comma. That's because you can't use a comma to connect two complete sentences. So again, that's the key distinction here, is that you could drop a logical connector just right in front of a sentence, and it's still a complete sentence. They're kind of powerful in that way. We can actually put them various places, right? You may have thought about this, but it could also come say like at the end of the sentence, you did not get the job, however. Or maybe even in the middle. He did not, however, get the job. These are all examples of how we can use logical connectors. All right, subordinators, now we're talking about things like although. All right, how do we connect these sentences with something like although? Well, this is a little different, right? The although might happen up front here, right? Although, helps if you spell it right. But, does this look right though? Although John was the most qualified candidate, period. Yeah, this doesn't quite work, does it? And the problem here is that we need to combine these sentences, all right? So, we're gonna need some punctuation here. That's a comma. There's another way to do this. John did not get the job, although he was the most qualified candidate. All right, so what are we noticing about these subordinators, these things like although that are subordinators? Well, first of all, they can't start complete sentences. They start what we call a dependent clause. It's dependent because it can't exist out there on its own, just like a child is a dependent and it can't exist alone in the world. It needs to attach to something that's independent, something, like this thing, all right? That's something that could be a complete sentence, all right? And that's actually why we call them subordinators. Sub as in below, right? So when you attach something like although to a sentence, it's below a sentence. It's less than a sentence. It's just a dependent clause, all right? Other examples of subordinators are, because or when. All right, notice the punctuation difference here, that when you get that adverb, that subordinator at the front, the dependent clause at the front, you get a comma. When the thing comes at the end, you don't get a comma. And then also notice how although can't move around like however was. We can say things like he did not, however, get the job. He did not get the job, however, but we don't say things like John was, although the most, no. Or John was the most qualified, although candidate, no. We're really kind of limited in how we can use these things. Why don't we look at a chart? Let's see if the chart makes sense of this, okay? All right, so here we see, some examples of logical connectors. It's all those ly words are logical connectors. And here we see some examples of subordinators. They're both adverbs, just different types. They work in different ways. Logical connectors kind of connect two things that can stand on their own. Subordinators, you get this kind of slightly more complicated relationship where one what used to be a sentence gets subordinated, right, and becomes a dependent clause. We see differences in punctuation. All right, how do you connect when there's a logical connector in play? Well, yeah, you can use a semicolon or a period. The choice here is you want things to feel like one sentence or two. Here we've got that comma or no comma, depending on where the subordinated clause, the dependent clause comes. All right, so, look at the examples, right? There's your semicolon, all right? We can throw these things at the end of sentences. Here's your comma. No comma here, right? It's also worth looking at common errors. This is where students, can run into trouble, all right? Here's one thing where we put just a comma in front of that independent clause, and that doesn't work. And believe it or not, Microsoft Word has been trained to pick these things up. You see the blue line? That's Microsoft Word trying to tell us that there's a grammar issue here. All right. The other thing you see is run-ons like this. We need something here. You can't just have one sentence run straight into another one. So that's, again, we need something, a semicolon or a period here. Common errors I see with subordinators is that people try to use them as if they were logical connectors. And I see things like although, comma, John, that's not how we do it, right? You don't say when, comma, I get home, or because, comma, I said so. You just say because I said so or when I got home, and it's the same thing. Although John was the most qualified candidate. The other common error you see is people trying to use these to start a sentence, that is actually just a dependent clause. That was a lot of grammar information in a short amount of time. Let's see if you can identify which sentences are correctly using logical connectors and subordinators.